The machine alarm was screaming when I saw Tommy Rodriguez go down. 1 second, he was checking the hydraulic press settings. Next second, 200 pounds of steel plate shifted and caught his leg. Blood everywhere. Tommy's screaming mixed with that damn alarm, and I knew we had maybe 3 minutes before shock set in. I'm Wade Morrison, 49 years old, and I thought I was having a routine Tuesday at Hammond Defense Manufacturing. Turns out it was the day everything changed. I ripped off my tie and wrapped it around Tommy's thigh, tourniquet tight. 25 years in manufacturing, 8 years Navy submarine service before that. You learn bleeding kills faster than procedures. The tie was silk. Probably cost me $80, but Tommy's got 3 kids and a mortgage. In the Navy, we had a saying, mission first, people always, politics never. That's when Cole Parker showed up, 28 years old, Harvard MBA, and son of our CEO, Diana Parker. Kid's been working here exactly 18 months, most of it sitting in conference rooms, learning the business from PowerPoint presentations. He took one look at me kneeling in Tommy's blood. No tie, sleeves rolled up, and his face went red. Morrison, what the hell do you think you're doing? I kept pressure on Tommy's leg. The ambulance was still 2 minutes out, saving this man's life. Get me the first aid kit from Station 7. You're in direct violation of executive appearance standards. Tie required for all management personnel on the factory floor. I looked up at him. Behind Cole's shoulder, I could see our entire morning shift watching this play out. Good people. People who've been building military-grade protective equipment since before Cole learned to drive. They were seeing their VP of operations bleeding through his dress shirt to save their coworker, while the boss's son worried about dress codes. Cole, we can discuss policies after Tommy's stable. No, we discuss this now. You're terminated, effective immediately. The words hung in the air like a bad joke that nobody was laughing at. Tommy was stabilizing. The EMTs were taking over. And Cole Parker had just fired his most experienced operations manager over a piece of fabric. You sure about this? I asked, standing up and wiping Tommy's blood off my hands. Company policy is company policy. You violated executive standards during a critical operational period. Behind him, I watched Shane Cooper from Defense Procurement shake his head and pull out his phone. Shane had flown in from Washington this morning for our 2 p.m. contract signing. The $1,009 billion deal would keep Hammond running for the next 8 years. The deal I'd been structuring for 36 months, building relationships with Pentagon procurement officers who trusted my Navy background and manufacturing experience. Those relationships weren't built in conference rooms. They came from understanding what happens when equipment fails in the field, when body armor doesn't stop what it's supposed to stop, when communication gear breaks down in combat zones. The Pentagon trusts contractors who understand that specs on paper mean nothing if the gear doesn't work when lives depend on it. Shane, I called out as the EMTs loaded Tommy onto the gurney. Rain check on that signing ceremony. Shane's face was grim. He'd just watched Hammond's lead operations officer get fired for saving a worker's life. In the defense contracting world, that tells you everything about a company's priorities. Mission first, people always, politics never. Cole had just violated all 3 principles in 30 seconds. Wade, this is insane. The contract specifically names you as key personnel. Cole straightened his own tie, probably cost more than Tommy made in a week. Hammond Industries has excellent management depth. The contract will proceed as scheduled. Actually, Shane said, scrolling through his phone, Section 12 of the Key Personnel Clause requires Wade Morrison's direct involvement through final delivery. Without him, we're looking at contract modification or withdrawal. The color drained from Cole's face. Maybe they don't teach reading comprehension at Harvard Business School. Or maybe when you've never had to earn anything in your life, you don't bother reading the fine print. I grabbed my jacket from the office chair. 25 years of 60-hour weeks, missed dinners with my daughter Katie, weekend emergency calls, and it came down to this. A kid with a famous last name deciding that appearance mattered more than substance, that politics trumped performance. That looking professional was more important than being professional. Shane, pleasure working with you. My recommendation is you find partners who understand what mission critical actually means. The factory floor had gone quiet except for the machine hum. 50 people watching their VP get fired for doing the right thing. Jessica Davis, our floor supervisor, caught my eye and shook her head slowly. She'd been running manufacturing operations for 12 years, knew every machine, every safety protocol, every worker's family situation. She understood what had just happened. Walking out felt different than I expected. lighter somehow. Despite losing the biggest deal I'd ever worked on, despite facing unemployment at 49, despite watching 3 years of relationship building evaporate, because Diana Parker's spoiled son couldn't handle seeing an executive without a tie during a medical emergency. The parking lot was quiet. Spring air felt clean after the factory's recycled atmosphere. My phone started buzzing immediately. Word travels fast in our industry, especially when a $1.9 billion defense contract suddenly goes sideways. The first call was from Lance Reynolds, our head of product development. Wade, what the hell just happened? Shane Cooper's team is packing up and the Pentagon procurement office is asking if we're still a viable contractor. Talk to Cole. He's running the show now. Cole doesn't know a hydraulic press from a coffee machine. Diana's in panic mode. The board's calling an emergency session for this afternoon. I turned off the phone without reading the other messages. Whatever crisis was unfolding at Hammond, it wasn't mine to solve anymore. At home, I did something I hadn't done on a Tuesday afternoon in probably 10 years. I poured a beer and sat on my back deck. When was the last time I'd noticed that my neighbor Mike was rebuilding his fence? When had I last seen that the oak tree in my yard was actually blooming? The news alerts started rolling in by evening. Hammond defense contract withdrawn. Pentagon questions, manufacturing leadership. Stock dropped 43% by market close. By morning, it would fall another 22% as the full implications hit. Defense contractors live or die on government confidence. Cole had just demonstrated that Hammond valued appearance over mission accomplishment. I felt bad for the line workers. People like Jessica Davis, who'd been running the factory floor for 12 years, Tommy Rodriguez, recovering from surgery but probably worried about his job security. These weren't the people who'd stayed silent while I got humiliated. These were folks who just wanted to build quality equipment and support their families. But the stronger part of me recognized something important. I hadn't failed them. Their leadership had, for the next week. I ignored my phone. Let everything go to voicemail. Colleagues, reporters, headhunters, former Pentagon contacts, everyone wanted to know what happened and what came next. I wasn't ready to answer because, honestly, I didn't know. Instead, I did things I'd forgotten I enjoyed. Slept 8 hours a night, cooked real meals instead of grabbing fast food between meetings, called my brother Heath in Denver. We talked for 2 hours about everything except work. You sound different, Heath said during our second conversation that week. More relaxed. Yeah, well, unemployment will do that. I've never heard you laugh like that. Getting fired might be the best thing that happened to you. Maybe he was right. 25 years of my life spent building other people's visions. What had they given me back? Steady paychecks, yes, but at what cost? I'd missed my daughter Katie's high school graduation ceremony for a quarterly review, skipped family reunions for budget meetings, built relationships with Pentagon procurement officers who respected my work, then watched those relationships get torched by a 28-year-old who'd never served anyone except himself. The submarine service taught me something most business executives never learn. In 400 feet of water, 200 miles from shore, there's no room for ego or politics. Equipment either works or people die. Leadership either earns respect through competence or the mission fails. When you're running silent and deep, the only thing that matters is whether your team trusts you to make the right call when everything's on the line. Cole Parker had never been tested like that. Never had to make a decision where other people's lives hung in the balance. Never had to earn respect from people who could evaluate his competence in real time. He'd inherited authority without understanding responsibility. 2 weeks into my unexpected vacation, Diana Parker finally reached me. Her voice sounded tired, strained. Wade, we need to talk. The board wants to meet with you. Do we? Because last time we talked, your son fired me for saving a worker's life. That was a catastrophic mistake. Cole's been reassigned to research analysis. The Pentagon won't return our calls. 3 major contracts are under review. We're looking at potential bankruptcy within 6 months. We need your help. I almost laughed. Help with what? Rebuilding relationships with procurement officers who'd watched their trusted contact get fired over a dress code, convincing defense contractors that Hammond understood mission priorities, explaining to government auditors why their key personnel clause had been triggered by a management decision to prioritize appearance over emergency response. What exactly are you offering? Come to the board meeting tomorrow. You can name your terms. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I needed the money or missed the office politics. but because an idea had been forming since that first day back home, something bigger than saving Hammond's government contracts, something that grew out of understanding what had really happened in that factory. The problem wasn't just Cole's terrible judgment, it was a system that created Cole's in the first place. A corporate culture that valued credentials over competence, inheritance over earning, appearance over substance. How many other working professionals faced the same arbitrary authority every day? I'd spent 8 years in submarine service and 25 years in manufacturing. Two environments where real performance mattered more than anything else. But most of the business world wasn't like that. Most places, politics trumped performance. Image mattered more than substance. And people like Cole Parker could destroy careers and companies because they'd never learned the difference. I called Diana back at 7 a.m. I'll meet with your board, but not tomorrow. Today, this afternoon, and I'm coming with conditions. What kind of conditions? The kind that ensure this never happens to anyone else again. 4 hours later, I walked into Hammond's boardroom wearing khakis, dress shirt, and blazer. No tie. The message wasn't subtle, but subtlety hadn't worked before. The board members stood when I entered, which was interesting. 2 weeks ago, they'd let Cole humiliate me without comment. Now they were treating me like visiting royalty. Desperation changes perspective quickly. "Thank you for coming, Wade," said Mason Clark. The board chairman, he was a good guy actually, former Navy himself, understood military values. But he'd been outvoted by other board members who thought keeping Diana happy was more important than questioning her son's judgment. "We really appreciate your willingness to discuss the situation. Let's skip the pleasantries. Your stock's down 68%. 3 Pentagon contracts under review. Defense Procurement Office is questioning your operational competence. Workers are updating their resumes. Even if I could somehow convince Shane to reconsider, and that's a significant if, the terms would be substantially worse." Uncomfortable shifting around the table. Board members exchanged glances. They'd run the numbers. Hammond Defense Manufacturing was worth maybe 40% of its value 2 weeks ago. The company Diana's father had built over 30 years was circling the drain because her son couldn't handle seeing an executive help an injured worker. "We understand the gravity," Diana said. She looked older, like the stress was aging her in real time. Dark circles under her eyes, hands shaking slightly when she reached for her coffee. "Do you? Because 2 weeks ago, you chose Cole's authority over business relationships. You chose dress code compliance over a $1.9 billion contract. You chose silence over defending someone who'd spent 3 years building those Pentagon relationships." The room went quiet. I could hear the air conditioning humming, papers rustling, someone's stomach growling. These people were scared. Really scared. Not just about losing money, but about losing everything the company represented. Why should I help any of you? Every person in that conference room 2 weeks ago watched your son destroy my career over a piece of fabric, and not one of you spoke up. Mason cleared his throat. "We made a terrible error in judgment. What would it take for you to consider returning?" I pulled out a folder my attorney had helped prepare the night before. "These terms are non-negotiable." I slid the contract across the table and watched their eyebrows rise as they read the first page. "Full reinstatement as Chief Operations Officer at triple my previous salary. Permanent board seat with voting rights. Complete autonomy over operational decisions. Substantial equity stake vesting immediately. Public acknowledgement of the error in my termination. And one more thing that caught their attention. This clause about new ventures," Diana said, reading carefully. "You want majority ownership of any business initiatives you develop while employed here. 70% ownership for me, 30% for Hammond. Any resources I use will be properly compensated and documented. All intellectual property developed remains with the venture." "That's highly unusual," another board member objected. "So is firing your VP of operations for saving a worker's life on the day of your biggest contract signing. Consider it insurance against future misunderstandings about whose judgment matters more." They looked at each other. Silent calculations happening around the table. Hammond's current value without me versus how expensive I'd become with me. The math wasn't complicated. A company worth 40% of its previous value couldn't afford to be picky about terms. "If we agree to these terms, you'll attempt to bring the Pentagon back to negotiations?" Mason asked. "I'll try. Can't promise success. The relationship damage is significant. Shane Cooper knows you revealed something important about Hammond's decision-making when you let Cole fire me. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild." "How much time?" Diana asked. "Depends how serious you are about change. The Pentagon doesn't just evaluate your products. They evaluate your leadership, your culture, your ability to execute under pressure. Cole's decision tells them everything they need to know about Hammond's priorities. Another round of silent board member communication. Glances, slight nods, barely perceptible headshakes. They were weighing bankruptcy against expensive redemption. Mason pushed the contract back to me. It now bore his signature. Done. One by one, the other board members signed. Deanna was last, her pen hovering over the signature line for a long moment before she added her name. "When can you start?" Mason asked. "I already have. I'll be making calls from my office. Prepare for difficult months ahead. Rebuilding what got destroyed won't be easy or quick." That night, I called Shane Cooper. As expected, he wasn't particularly interested in revisiting the Hammond deal. "Your company showed its true colors, Wade. Decision-making process, priorities, how they treat their own people. Why would defense want to tie our future to that? You'd be trusting me. I now have authority to guarantee what I promise." "What kind of authority?" "Board seat, operational autonomy, contract veto power, the ability to ensure mission-critical decisions get made by people who understand what mission-critical means." After 90 minutes of conversation, Shane agreed to consider a revised proposal. Terms would be much less favorable to Hammond. Pentagon would pay 35% less, demand more oversight, require additional quality controls. But it was something, a foundation to build on. "You understand. This is probationary," Shane said. "Any more Cole Parker situations, any indication that politics trumps performance and we're done permanently." "Understood. That's why the changes go deeper than just bringing me back." Over the next month, I worked to stabilize what could be saved while pursuing an idea that had been growing since that first day home. The unusual ownership clause in my contract hadn't been random. I had a plan that went beyond saving Hammond's government contracts. I started with Lance Reynolds, our head of product development. Good guy, understood engineering, respected the manufacturing floor. Need a small team for a side project. Something experimental, manufacturing focus. Lance looked intrigued. "What kind of project?" "Professional workwear. Specifically clothing that adapts to different workplace environments and safety requirements. That's not our industry." "No, but it's a market with problems that need solving. My contract gives me freedom to explore new verticals. Hammond gets 30%. I retain 70%, all properly documented." "What's the business case?" I thought about Tommy Rodriguez, bleeding on the factory floor while Cole Parker worried about tie compliance. How many working professionals face arbitrary authority every day? How many get fired for prioritizing substance over appearance? How many companies lose good people because management doesn't understand the difference between looking professional and being professional? Lance was quiet for a moment. "You're talking about more than just clothes. I'm talking about solutions. Clothing that meets every conceivable professional standard while actually being functional. Gear that works in boardrooms and on factory floors. Designs that prove you don't have to choose between looking good and performing well." "Interesting. What would you need?" 6 people, evening and weekend work initially. Product development, materials engineering, design. People who understand that form follows function, not the other way around. Within a week, Lance had assembled his team. Good people, excited about the creative challenge. They understood what we were really building. Not just better workwear, but a statement about priorities. A response to every Cole Parker in every company who confused authority with leadership. We called it Tactical Pro Industries. The development process was different from anything I'd done before. Instead of designing for specifications handed down from management, we designed for real problems faced by real people. I wore prototypes to Hammond meetings. Clothing that looked like standard business attire, but incorporated features that actually mattered. Reinforced areas that didn't show. Pockets designed for tools and equipment. Fabrics that handled factory environments while meeting executive appearance standards. Every piece designed to prove that professional appearance and practical function weren't mutually exclusive. People noticed, asked questions, "Where did I shop? Who made that jacket? Could they get something similar?" 6 months later, we were ready for launch. What had started as evening brainstorming sessions had become a sophisticated operation. We'd partnered with a manufacturing facility in North Carolina, developed proprietary fabric blends that met both durability and appearance requirements. Created designs that solved real problems working professionals faced every day. The day before our official launch, I called a company-wide meeting at Hammond. Everyone attended. They knew something big was coming, but nobody expected what I was about to announce. Today marks an important milestone. I began standing in the same conference room where Cole had humiliated me 12 months earlier. We've weathered our crisis, stabilized our core business, and restored Pentagon confidence. Now I'm ready to announce something new. Diana sat in the front row looking confused. This wasn't on her agenda. The restructured defense contract had finally closed 3 months ago. Less favorable terms than originally negotiated, but enough to ensure Hammond's survival. Shane Cooper had made his continued support conditional on my operational leadership, a point he emphasized publicly in procurement circles. For the past 6 months, a small team has been working on a special project, innovation that represents transformation. I clicked to display our first slide. The Tactical Pro Industries logo, professional workwear designed for people who understand that functionality and appearance aren't mutually exclusive. Images of our designs filled the screen. Murmurs swept through the room as people recognized the clothing I'd been wearing to meetings. Professional appearance with practical functionality built in. These aren't just clothes. They're solutions. Every piece addresses specific challenges working professionals face daily. I demonstrated the adaptability, reinforced areas that didn't compromise appearance, integrated tool loops that looked like design elements, fabrics that handled factory environments while meeting executive dress standards. Market research indicates significant demand. We've secured manufacturing partnerships, distribution channels, and a marketing strategy built on authentic storytelling. I advanced to financial projections that made several executives sit straighter. Every Tactical Pro piece includes a tag explaining its inspiration. The story of how arbitrary judgment nearly destroyed relationships built over decades. When professional capability becomes secondary to superficial compliance, everyone loses. Complete silence. Everyone knew exactly what I was referencing. The day Cole Parker fired me for saving Tommy Rodriguez's life. The day a missing tie cost Hammond a $1.9 billion contract and nearly bankrupted the company. Tactical Pro offers a practical solution. Thanks to my employment contract, this operates independently with Hammond retaining 30% ownership. All development costs have been properly compensated and documented. The launch exceeded every projection we'd made. Press coverage focused on both innovation and origin story. Fired for saving a life. How one manager built an empire became viral headlines across business and manufacturing publications. Orders overwhelmed our initial inventory. Working professionals across industries responded to practical designs and the message behind them. We weren't just selling clothes. We were selling dignity, functionality, and professional confidence for people tired of choosing between looking good and performing well. 2 weeks after launch, Shane Cooper mentioned Tactical Pro in a Pentagon procurement newsletter. Outstanding practical design from people who understand real workplace challenges. Recommended for defense contractors seeking professional appearance standards that don't compromise operational effectiveness. Orders tripled overnight. Government contractors, manufacturing companies, engineering firms, people who'd faced their own version of Cole Parker's arbitrary authority and wanted clothing that worked in the real world. 3 months later, Tactical Pro had become something bigger than I'd imagined. We expanded into safety equipment, workplace accessories, and specialized gear for different industries. Each piece maintaining our core philosophy: professional appearance shouldn't compromise practical function or personal safety. Financial results spoke for themselves. Tactical Pro generated more first-quarter revenue than Hammond's core defense business. The 30% ownership stake had become Diana Parker's most valuable asset, worth more than the original Pentagon contract Cole had destroyed. Meanwhile, Tommy Rodriguez had returned to work with full mobility and a story he told anyone who'd listen. About the VP who ripped off his tie to save Tommy's life, got fired for it, then came back stronger and built something that proved competence mattered more than compliance. On the anniversary of my firing, I called one final company meeting at Hammond. The atmosphere was celebratory rather than tense. The crisis had passed, relationships were rebuilt, and everyone understood what had really changed. 1 year ago, I was fired for removing my tie during a medical emergency. Today, I want to talk about growth, not just revenue, but understanding. I displayed Tactical Pro's remarkable trajectory on the conference room screen. What began as response to arbitrary judgment became something larger, a movement celebrating substance over superficiality, competence over compliance, mission accomplishment over political appearance. I announced Tactical Pro's transition to full independence, with Hammond retaining its profitable ownership stake. Then I revealed my final surprise: a foundation funded by our profits, providing grants and mentorship to professionals facing workplace discrimination or arbitrary authority. The fellowship program includes opportunities for those who've made significant professional mistakes and demonstrated genuine commitment to growth. After the meeting, Cole Parker approached me. First time since that day a year ago, the entitlement was gone, replaced by something like humility. He'd spent 10 months in research analysis, working with people who evaluated him based on performance rather than pedigree. The fellowship program, is it real? Everything I do is real. Would I be eligible? I studied him. 29 years old now, privileged background, but maybe capable of learning what he'd never been taught. About earning respect instead of demanding it. About understanding the difference between authority and leadership. Application process is rigorous. Comprehensive self-assessment, growth plan, factory floor training rotation. No special treatment because of who your mother is, he nodded. I understand. I just want the chance to become someone different than who I was that day. 2 months later, Cole applied and received an alternate fellowship position. His message afterward was simple: "Thank you for the opportunity to be more than my worst moment. Tactical Pro grew beyond my wildest projections." What started as response to humiliation evolved into an enterprise empowering thousands of working professionals to navigate workplace challenges without compromising their dignity, safety, or effectiveness. The revenge, if you could call it that, wasn't Cole's diminishment or Hammond's struggle. It was transforming a moment meant to shame me into a movement that elevated others, proving that competence, properly supported, will always triumph over arbitrary authority. Sometimes the most powerful response to someone trying to make you smaller is growing so large they can't help but stand in your shadow. That shadow can either darken their world or provide light for growth. The choice, as always, is theirs. But here's what I learned. When you build something meaningful from pain, when you turn humiliation into opportunity for others, when you prove that substance matters more than appearance, that's not just revenge, that's transformation. And transformation, unlike revenge, creates value that lasts long after the satisfaction fades. What workplace injustice have you faced that could become your foundation for something bigger? What arbitrary authority in your life needs to be challenged not with destruction, but with excellence? Sometimes the best way to prove them wrong is to prove yourself right. Thanks for staying with my story. I'd love to hear what resonated with you most: the firing, the comeback, or building something meaningful from the pain. Your thoughts matter, so drop them in the comments below.